noticing like the body trigger of anxiety, and then like, oh, that means use a spiritual tool. Great. And then that keeps my brain busy. So I've got mind, body, spirit all taken care of.
All right, Hedge Schoolers, welcome back to the How to Be Human podcast. We have a wonderful guest today, my dear friend Josie Coleman. I have known her for many years in many different capacities, and I could go through what those capacities are, but I thought it would be better if Josie, if you kind of gave us a little intro of who you are and what you're up to right now.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This is so great. I am Josie Coleman, and I live on the Oregon coast. And how we know each other is just like being in a small town. And my actual first memory of you, when I was thinking about this, because I'm like, I'm sure I could go back, as I'm pretty sure that I met you at like Osborne's grocery or something, like in the grocery store. I don't know if you worked there or not, but like that's my memory of like this grocery store. We'd all kind of come through and get to know each other, and just get to know each other over the years, especially because you were of a generation that like I met you after high school. Maybe you would come back and visit your family. So I kind of knew you through people. And so it's just funny. I love that I have this opportunity, because I've lived here so long, to get to know people over 25 years. And that's a long time. And think about how much both of us have changed in 25 years, you know?
It's a long time.
I feel like you probably weren't even born. I know you were 25 years ago, but I'm like, were you born 25 years ago? That's so funny.
We'll never tell. We'll never tell.
We'll never tell. I know. But yeah, I worked as a hairdresser in a small town on the Oregon coast for over 2 decades and loved it. And I started realizing that I was an empath. And I think I knew that before. I was just denying it. It was just in the hair industry. And I'm sure if there's any hairdressers watching, you'll be like nodding your head. In this industry, you really pick up on people's vibes and their energy. And of course, somebody's touching your head and you just want to tell them all your problems. So I started realizing I was having a really hard time, not being like, I wasn't able to let it go at the end of the day. And then, unbeknownst to me, I didn't make this connection till later, but I started having some physical problems, and I had a lower back problem. A client of mine suggested a naturopath and a chiropractor, and I went there and I started to feel better. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just my back, maybe it's this. And my naturopath was like, you should go to this intuitive. You should get a reading from an intuitive. And I was like, okay. I just had no sense of what that was. I had no preconditioned notion of, was that good or bad? So I was really open to it. And it just happened that I met Liliana Barzola through Lotus Lantern in Portland, Oregon. And it was great because I remember sitting outside of the door waiting for her to come out. And I was like, okay, so is an intuitive like an old lady? Like, what is an intuitive? I have no idea. I didn't know the words. I didn't know what it meant. And she walked out. She was beautiful, Latina, younger than me. And we immediately just started riffing off each other and laughing. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what this is. And she gave me a reading and I felt so much better, so much more relieved. And at the end, she said, I have these classes. They're kind of about intuition if you want to take them. And I was like, I feel like I'm a little too open with my intuition, so maybe I shouldn't take these classes. And she was like, oh, no. This is for people that are too open. And it teaches you ethics, because you're actually being an out of control healer as a hairdresser, and you're taking on too much stuff. It's getting stuck in your body, et cetera, et cetera. And that like blew my mind. I was like, wait, there's rules, like there's ethics, there's ways of being an intuitive without feeling drained at the end of every 8-hour, 10-hour day, whatever. And so it was just like this door opened up, and I started taking classes, learning things. And then it's funny because, here I am, a hairdresser in a small town. Then I start talking about intuition and empath and being an empath, and people are kind of like, okay, whatever, Josie, and then over the years, I was like, hey, Liliana wants me to help teach classes. I'm going to do this. And people are just like, okay, whatever, and it just slowly started to creep into my work day. I was starting to do readings, teach classes. And now I do mostly readings and classes in astrology. And then I still kind of keep my foot in the door with the hairdressing because that's kind of my social scene. But that's kind of my history. And it's been really interesting to be a person who's made quite a big arc, like in a spiritual arc, in a small town where everybody knows me and knows my good side and my bad side. And you can't, you have to really accept both those sides of yourself. You can't walk around like with this great spiritual hubris of like, I'm fantastic, I'm a healer, because somebody's like, oh, I saw you 2 years ago or 20 years ago and I know it, blah blah blah. So it's just kind of an interesting way to be, I think.
I love that. I have never known that part of your story. I guess I always envisioned you as always being intuitive and being aware of your capacity and ability in that area, and that you went in almost like a binary of not knowing anything at all. And this whole transition into, really looked at as a leader in the field of, not so much like you're leading the pack, but people can come to you. And if they have their own intuitions or, empathic qualities, they are able to be empowered by you and through you so that they can come into their own space of that. So, and I love something else that you said in there was the your first meeting of Liliana, and you envision like this, the envisioning of an intuitive as the wise old crone, she's gonna have a walking stick and maybe a hood on and kind of thing.
Totally.
And Liliana probably came out with her beautiful brunette hair and just
yes, which was so good for me, because if I had like met somebody who was that image and then started doing this work, I would have tried to emulate that. And it was like having this kind of shock. I was like, oh, well, if she gets to be who she wants to be, that means I get to be who I want to be. And there's no like rote way of doing it,
I think that's almost the rote way of doing it, is letting people be who they are. And, like kind of like that's the best way to do it. I'm sure the other ways are done and mimicking and, shadowing people, but like being yourself is like where the juice is for sure.
Yeah. And it's the interesting thing about it is that's you change. So, how you start out is you evolve. And so maybe your look or the way that the things you're interested in, the way you talk, that changes too. And so that's really been interesting for me to like allow that to happen and not just try to be the Josie image or whatever.
I love that. I love that. Something for me that people might be able to see is I used to have like a half side of my head was shaved, and it was really a period of my life of kind of going through some fierce feminine warrior energy, and I needed that fierceness. And my hair is kind of growing out now, so I'm kind of like in a transition of, perhaps softening up a little bit, and we'll see where it goes, but totally understand the changing shapes with the changing times. So
yeah, that's a great way to put it, actually.
Cool. Okay, well, we got a little background. So as we're gonna do is we're just gonna roll through the how to be human prompt list and see what comes up for you here, and just rock and roll. You ready?
Yes, I am.
Cool. All right, so the first question is a two-parter. So essentially, how to be human, and what is the best integration of humanness?
Yeah, I loved it. I love this question because when I was thinking about just the word human, I'm like, what is it to be human? And my belief is that I chose to be here. So I chose to be in this human body. I'm a spirit. That's my belief is I'm a spirit experiencing a human life, So lately, especially this year in 2022, I've been thinking like, okay, so if I chose to be here, what does that mean? Like, what part of this experience am I currently liking and what part am I not liking? And it's really hard to kind of reckon with both. Like when I think about being human and integrating that idea into my everyday, I can't help but think of astrology because that's something I do. And we go through these really long arcs in our life of themes, like we're working on our self, our home, our partnership, our work. And really being human to me is is trying to be present and trying to notice like the positives, the challenges. Where am I? What do I need? It's this kind of constant, the word I kept thinking was like reckoning. I'm reckoning, I'm thinking all the time, wondering like who I am and why I'm here and what I'm doing, which I know can be super overwhelming for people I'm around.
Yeah. It's like your journal prompt every morning. Who am I?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it every morning,
Yeah.
but
No, I wouldn't either, but I can't help it.
I love what you said there of the reckoning, and the thing that came up for me was kind of thinking of, the spectrum of positive and challenges as if those were on two sides. And for me, the reckoning is kind of always, how can I turn a challenge into a positive, right? How can I slide it over here or transform it into something? You know, haven't mastered that yet, without just
Yeah.
completely surrendering what I think about situations and what whatever is going to happen next. And, but I think there's really some power in that ability to almost walk a circle around reckoning. Like,
Mhm.
because how do we really know if something is positive in our life or if it's just a challenge, and when do they switch, or when does it kind of move around? I think
Yeah.
that's interesting for me, and that question kind of leads me, like, how would somebody integrate for like you reckoning into their life? Like what?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way I think about it is there's those two lines, like the positive, the challenging. In my mind, for me, they're always happening. They're kind of like weaving together all the way up, So it's whatever I'm going through, it is kind of allowing both to exist at the same time and not judge myself, because I, like you, which I love this idea of when something's challenging, how do we make it a positive aspect? How do we grow? How do we do all that? Those are great questions. The other thing that I have learned for myself is sometimes that I can't get there. It's like it's too big of a leap. And so I have to remind myself, you know what? It's okay if they're both existing at the same time and kind of like interweaving through my day or whatever experience I'm having, and kind of just
Interesting.
being okay with that, because I am a perfectionist and I would always love to be happy. I would always love to be right. And so what I've learned is that I'm not perfect. I'm never gonna be perfect. And so really just constantly going like, okay, Josie, it's hard. It's hard right now. You're having a hard time with this. Like you're having a hard time believing that you deserve this, or that um, this is good for you or whatever, even if you know that it is. Just let it be. Let it be also hard, and keep going towards the positive.
Yeah, I really like that sense of surrender and acceptance. Surrender not in the sense of like quitting, but that sense of acceptance of certain parts of yourself that maybe they don't need to be cleaned up. Maybe you can still be a little fierce and feisty and whatever it needs to be to lay those boundaries. One of the things that came up when you were talking about the spiral and kind of moving, and how utilizing positive and challenges as almost parallel lines on that spiral,
Yeah.
is where, if we were a sphere that kind of went up that, have you ever seen those Rube Goldberg machines where the marble
Yes.
kind of rolls down? Yeah.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. So like if we were a marble moving between those two parallel lines, whether we fit within those lines or we lean more towards the positive side or the challenging side, or we want to move, my sense was something about like where we put our attention. If we put our attention on the positive or put our attention on the challenging stuff, is going to affect how the movement of the whole spiral goes.
Yeah, I like that. And also evaluating why, what the programming is in your mind as to why you would look at one thing. Like, for example, what was going through my mind when you said that is like, yeah, I grew up in kind of I mean, quite honestly, it was like a half-assed Christian home. Sometimes they were Christian, sometimes they weren't, which was fine. So I had like that religious half background, but I knew that there were rules, and I knew that there were certain ways to behave. So even though that's not a part of my life and hasn't been for a long time, that's still in the back of my head. So I'm like, why am I thinking I need this positive thing? Is it, what's the reason behind it? It's always like going behind it, like trying to figure out what systems are in my brain. I think a lot of people are doing that right now, is recognizing, oh, I am from a system that isn't for me, or wasn't really developed for me to be my best self. So how do I deconstruct the ways I'm thinking, and what do I really want to go for?
Ooh, I love the word that you said there, recognizing, and it's almost a softer term than reckoning, because reckoning
Yeah,
almost seems like knights in armor and shining swords and
that's scary.
reckon, yeah. But recognizing is so soft. Of like, just take a look, right? Like, just take a
Yeah.
look at the systems that have perhaps been put in place, and whether you believe in them or not, they're a foundational part of your matrix and your framework and setup. So there's still some pieces to take a look at and maybe weave through and take your little eraser and erase and connect some different lines and dots and stuff.
Yeah, and getting away from like the judgment of it. It's like that I had a great experience growing up. Like I'm not saying something's wrong or right for other people. It's that idea of like self-compassion. What do I have that's maybe led to anxiousness, or that perfect picture that I say that I'm like a perfectionist, and Liliana taught me this idea of this perfect picture. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a great term, because I have this image up ahead that this is what I need to be. So this, yeah, recognizing like, why do I want that? Is that what I want right now? And just sort of weighing it out. Yeah, I like the softer term though.
Recognizing.
I come
Love
in
it.
guns a-blazing about reckoning.
Right. Just a little bit more gentle there.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So if we're going to run on this theme, my next question would be, how can we intentionally engage all humans to be more human?
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really great. The thing that came to me when you said that, because I was like, yeah, that's what this year is about. Again, I'm thinking astrology. We've had 2020, 2021, where we've had some big upheavals and some big challenges. We're still in them. There's a lot going on in the world stage, but this idea that this year is about really looking inward. So, if we're looking inward, how are we engaging with other people? And the thing that I see is, the more I'm interested in myself and my reasoning for things, and just learning to have self-compassion, I find that I listen differently to other people. And this idea that helping anyone else engage in a different way is really about owning my own energy, owning my own story, being in a place where I can listen to them and their story. And then, when somebody's listening to you, you're like, this feels good. I love that they're so interested in me. And it's a healing, and then there, you feel safe to express who you are to them. So it's like this energy exchange, but it's not about, I want you to engage, I want you to be human like me and think like me. It's like, I feel good with who I am. Now I'm really available to listen to you. And that's hard these days because we have a lot of different opinions.
Totally. It
Sorry
is.
about my dog.
That's okay. Hello,
Yeah.
puppies. Um, yeah, just kind of, so one of the things you said in there about allowing people to, let's not be their best selves, but like reveal themselves is kind of the, that revealing, so they don't have to cover with whatever pretense or whatever they think you want, whatever they think they should be,
Yeah.
and really creating the space for them to allow to reveal. That might sound a little too much, but like,
Mhm.
how are you really feeling, kind of thing. Don't just tell me I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine. And sometimes I'm fine is okay because you don't want to get into it. But when we're talking about engaging people into being more human, on that aspect of really, what's underneath the surface, what's in your heart and what's in your gut, and are those things connected? And is that, what's coming through your mind and through your mouth? And how can we help facilitate that for you. I might not agree with what you're saying
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But
yeah.
if you listen long enough, if you have enough patience to do that, you'll find the reasoning behind it. Cause I'm like you, I'm like, sometimes somebody says something and I disagree with it. And I'm like, okay, here I go. Like, stay in the moment, Josie. Cause it's, because when you're hearing something that you don't like, there are times when you can say, you have the option to just be like, this is too much for me. I'll see you later. But if for me, when I'm in a place where I'm available and I want to hear what this person says, if I start feeling anxious, if I start feeling like, no, they gotta get this concept or whatever, I pull my energy back because that's my energy reaching out towards them, wanting to control them.
Mm,
Hence the out of control healer that a lot of us have. And I'm still dealing with it. I still see it. So I
yeah.
pull it back and I'm like, I'm okay. I'm great. Can I get neutral and hear what they're saying? A lot of times when I can do that, what I hear them saying is that they are maybe talking to me and feeling so grateful that they can express themselves. Maybe I'm hearing that they have a lot of fear and that they're afraid to talk about that fear, and just me allowing them to talk about it makes them feel safer, because maybe I'm reflecting back to them what they're saying, or I'm like, wow, that sounds really hard or whatever. Those are basic kind of communication skills, but well, maybe not basic for some of us. I had to learn it. I take that back. But just letting people have room to really express what they're saying. Cause I think, like you said, when people go, how are you? And you're like, I'm fine. We have like this little thing that we do. We're like, how are you? Great. What do you think? What, on this issue, da, 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 isn't that horrible? And it's like, whoa, my head is spinning, but like, how are you?
Yeah,
That's kind of a harder place to get to really hear it.
totally. One of the things that I've noticed when you kind of expressed about, noticing your energy go towards somebody is if I'm starting to feel a little rapid in my breathing, I'm starting to, my energy is starting to come away from me. And if I can stay grounded and centered, which for me would just mean my breath is regulated and I'm not focusing too much on it, but it's just a simple in and out breath, that generally will help somebody else, whoever I'm talking to, tune into that kind of just regulated space to just really, we don't have to ramp up the conversation and get into help each other and get into all these things, and
Yeah.
like just really just keep it smooth right here. And sometimes the smoothness is all that someone needs to feel their humanness.
Yeah. 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 And if I'm wanting them to feel their humanness, I have to be in a place where I'm available to do that. I mean, some people, you start to do that and you're like, I do not feel safe in this moment, or I don't feel it, like I'm neutral enough, and that's okay to get out of those conversations. And that shows boundaries. The more, the better boundaries you have, people are going to be like, hey, I liked talking with you. I don't know why, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, there's room for both. Yeah. And I love that idea of like regulating your breathing, because yeah, that's a huge one when it's just like, what am I waiting for the next thing?
Right? Yeah, especially boundaries, right? That could be also a signifier that I may not be in the right situation to be having this conversation with somebody. Because as you
Yeah.
termed earlier, being an intuitive or an empath, sometimes people are drawn to you and they want to tell you all their stuff. And there's just not enough capacity or energy for me or somebody else to hold all that. So, definitely having boundaries of, who are the, I wouldn't say trusted people in my life, but the people that I feel connected to, that I can hold that space for, who I know are going to hold that space for me as well. It's a reciprocal
Yeah.
kind of action there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it's usually not that many people that you have that with, and that's something I think as an empath and a hairdresser, I felt like I had to have that with everybody. And I always had this like thing in my head. If I had 10 clients, I always felt really sorry for the 10th client because my fuse was short. I had like probably no food. So I was always like, oh God, it's 6 o'clock at night. You want to tell me your story? Like, I don't care, whereas the first person, I'm like, oh, tell me everything. And I know people out there all understand that because we empaths, people come towards us and they're like, you look like a nice garbage receptacle. I'm going to puke everything up on you. I feel great. Thanks. Bye. And then the empath's like, ah.
I love that. So I just got my hair done a couple weeks ago, and I told my hairdresser because I was her 5 o'clock, and I said, "If you are tired, I'm tired. If you are tired, you don't have to talk to me. We don't have to talk." And we had like a couple little more conversations. In the next 45 minutes, it was quiet, and it was awesome. Like
So great.
it was
Every
cool.
hairdresser in the world is like, thank you right now when they see this.
I love it. I love it. All right. Okay. So, what to you, Josie, are the best examples of being human? Who are these people?
Mhm.
And what do their practices look like?
It's so funny because when I read this, I was like, who is perfect out there? Like, who do I know that's really great, And I was like, that's a hilarious thing to think because obviously nobody's perfect. But I would say, there's like two different kinds of people that come to mind. One is my neighbor who is 81 years old or 80 something. And I shouldn't say her age, of course, that's rude. But what I've noticed about that is she is my mom's age. My mom has been gone for 20 years or so, 15 years, whatever. So I haven't had a mom for a long time. So I gravitate towards women who are the same age as my mom. And so I have this neighbor. I love her. She loves my dogs. She watches them sometimes for me. But what I really love about her is that her brain is always going. Like every time I go over to see her, she says, "Oh, I was just reading this book about, I don't even know." Like she'll come, it's usually authors that I've heard of, and then I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know that book, blah, 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 blah." But she said, "Oh, this is a great new concept for me. I'm going to try it." Like something for her spirit, something for her body. And I just love soaking up the idea that you get to be like that your whole life. Because I have a lot of examples just in my family and people I've known over the years where they just start, I don't know what the term is, but they just start kind of checking out. And I don't know. I'm not quite sure I don't mean to say something negative about people, but I get excited about the people that are older and still think there's something to learn. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm excited about that. And the other people that come to mind are the people that I work with, Liliana Barzola, who I work for at Lotus Lantern, and Jenna Dalton, who's one of my coworkers. What I love about them is that I work in this safe environment where they get to come and be who they are. It's an even exchange, and that is something we've cultivated over time. And that is something that I see in other people and appreciate, because I can spout off like, this is how I'm human and this is how I'm vulnerable and blah, 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 blah. But maybe I'm not somebody who allows other people to be that way, or maybe don't let them, I don't want them to be that way. Like, I want you guys to be perfect. And then I get to be the messed up one or whatever, so I've really enjoyed that kind of camaraderie, which I think is rare in work and in life. So I have those two examples that I was thinking about are kind of on a weekly experience for me, that I always observe, and I learn something new from these guys. I'm learning something new from my neighbor. And it just reminds me, like when I feel kind of down or just dead inside, I'm like, this too shall pass. I will get to the other side and want to learn something again,
I
If they
love
could
that.
survive, I could survive.
I love that. Just seeing, an 81-year-old who's abundant and vibrant for continuing to learn in their
Yeah.
life. I've heard that saying too about some people grow in age and some people grow in maturity, and your age doesn't determine your maturity. And, sometimes the candle just fizzles or, just stops getting lit. And that's sad to see, but it's so exciting to see people who are vibrant and continuing to do things and travel. It reminds me of my grandma. My grandma, I
Oh.
won't say her age, she'll be mad at me. But she is one of those who is vibrant and learning and doing things where you're like, that Spitfire has more energy than me some days. And I'm like, dang girl, what do you got over there? And
Yeah.
it's like a cocktail of life kind of thing going on.
Yes, a cocktail of life. I love that. And isn't that fun when you realize, like, ooh, that's in me. Like,
Yeah,
that's in me. I get to be a Spitfire.
totally. And it's like, it makes me curious. Okay, like that, where this question kind of stems from are what are the things they've been doing? Obviously, they've been doing it longer
Mhm.
What can I learn from them to start bringing into my own life to integrate? And I think that the thing that you just laid there was like, she's continuing to learn. Like she's taken a new book off the shelf. She's probably read some new ones I haven't even read yet. And I read a lot and applying them into her life. Like
Yeah.
that's a sign of I think it's like an adaptable mind, one of those mindsets that you're willing to try new things and keep going, and that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's amazing. Yeah. And I know it gets harder as we get older too. So that's something that I look at like, oh, the adventure doesn't stop, especially for women. It doesn't stop after I've accomplished everything. I've turned a certain age or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, so what do you think are easy reminders to be more human when some around us are walking and talking a little less human, perhaps
Yeah.
programmed, conditioned?
Yeah. When I think of an easy reminder, I think of, the tools, kind of what you said before about regulating your breath. What that is to me is okay, turning inward. And it's really the reminder for me that I do for myself. And I do this in the grocery store because this is where it always happens. I go to the Safeway and Seaside. So if any of you are ever visiting on the coast, that Safeway and Seaside is like the busiest place in the summer. And there's just so many people. And I'll walk in there and I forget. I constantly, even after 2 decades, I'm like, right, I live in a tourist town. You can't walk into a grocery store on Saturday. There's too many people, okay, I wasn't ready for this. Here I go. So I'm walking around and I kind of feel like the unconsciousness and the anxiety, of people on vacation. And I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God, what do I do? What do I do? And I can't think. And I've taught myself over the years, when you can't think of a golden sun, which is a tool we teach that I'm sure through Lotus Lantern, which is basically a tool where you pull back your energy. Because again, as an empath, when you're walking through a crowd of people or even just along your life and you start feeling the unconsciousness and people who right now I feel a lot of anger and fear. And I get like that, it kind of ignites me, it lights me up, and then it makes me want to go and heal everybody, and I'm doing this unconsciously. So the reminder when I start to feel that and how that feels in my body is like anxiety, and all of a sudden I can't remember what I'm there for. It's like brain fog. When I have those two triggers, I'm like, oh, pull your energy back, Josie. Come into your body this moment, love yourself, ground your feet, whatever, so I'm mumbling as I go through the grocery store. I'm like, oh, I'm going to call back my energy and I'm going to reset it at just self-love. And, I've got golden sun on top of my head and I'm showering it down. I'll do like 100 of them. And what I think is really important about that, again, is it's okay to walk through a sea of unconscious people and not have to heal them all. Just be within yourself, self-love, self-compassion, self-recognition, just kind of seeing who you are. That is like this thing that you can do that's amazing, that heals you and then allows everybody else to kind of keep their energy in their space, which could perhaps give them an opportunity to heal themselves. So I'm kind of, the more I heal myself, the more I can heal other people. And it's noticing like the body trigger of anxiety, and then like, oh, that means use a spiritual tool. Great. And then that keeps my brain busy. So I've got mind, body, spirit all taken care of.
I love it. I love it. That's such a fascinating tool. It's a tool that I'm definitely well aware of. And for any intuitives or empaths out there, something to just start bringing into your life, bringing that golden sun over your head, wherever you happen to be, whatever your trigger happens to be, because it's not the same for everybody, right? Yours
No.
is the grocery store and Seaside. Some people, it could be going to their old high school. It could be going to a sports game, whatever kind of thing. When you feel your energy going towards other people or outside of you, or that anxiety coming up, yeah, use that golden sun, bring it up above, bring it back. And then what did you say? Set it at self-love.
Yeah, that's, if you can't think of it, it's like you just imagine a golden sun on top of your head. It's sitting on top of your head. It's a container. So I'm like, ooh, anxiety. Okay. Sometimes I don't even know what it is. So I imagine I'm calling all my energy back. It's up in the golden sun, but I'm feeling anxious. So I don't want to call my energy back in my body because then that'll just triple my anxiety. So I call my anxiety back. I have it up in this golden sun. and then I reset it. I make the intention, set it at self-love, self-compassion, just being present in the moment for myself. I imagine I crack that like a big egg, that new energy flows down, and I imagine it going all the way down my body into my toes and into the earth. And really, it like feels really good, but you're just shifting energy around. And, like I say, I'll do 100 of them.
Again and again. And eventually you won't go to Seaside on a Saturday.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I'll be in the car going, oh, wait, it's Saturday. I should not go today. So. And I want to point out too that the great thing about these tools is so many people teach them. I think every healer and way of doing it is great. That golden sun tool is a part of our Lotus Lantern. It's called the ABC Collective, and it's a DIY course. I just want to put a shout out there. If somebody's like, well, that's a cool tool, how do I learn more about that? We have videos and stuff.
So I will link that down below so that we have links to that, because those are great courses. I've taken them myself. I've gone all the way through the D course, and highly recommend for anybody who needs some help bringing their energy in. And it's not too woo. It's like perfectly integrated, embodied, gives you some empowering steps to utilize, and you can take it whatever direction you want.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to learn that stuff too. There's so many great healers out there. But.
Totally. Cool. All right. So here's our next one. How do we reconcile where we are with where we want to be with grace and ease?
Yeah. I think not buying into the lie that I have to do it all myself. So reconciling, like, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to be, for me means I need help. I need knowledge. I need support that's maybe outside of me, or somebody else just helping me process internally. It's not that I'm looking for somebody who has the answer of where I'm going, but being a human means that I've decided to exist with other humans, and they have knowledge, they have a word for me, that can help me move from point A to point B. I personally like to believe that I can, all on my own strength, make it from point A to point B. And maybe I don't like where I'm at, this reconciling, like, how I'm so far away. And then I get all this, what compounds on me is self-doubt, persecution, like, oh, you suck, you can't get there. So the easiest way for me to bring grace into that movement is to reach out to somebody, a healer or a friend or somebody who's reading an interesting book, and just be like, hey, what are you doing? And they'll say, oh, I'm just learning about this, or gosh, you're doing really great. You were really down 2 weeks ago, and now you're like, you seem a little better. And it's like, oh, I do? Oh, that's great. Because I've been working really hard. It's like this whole, the interaction and the co-creation with people. So I'd say it's that's what grace is co-creation, because I decided to be here. Might as well use the people around me.
I love that word, co-creation. It just gave me chills from the top of my head all the way down. It actually seemed like it kind of played into our last question of where, easy reminders, we kind of needed to set boundaries inside of the grocery store and bring our energy back. And one of the things I heard you say here was being willing to accept help. And, this has kind of been a big theme in my life of allowing myself to receive from another human being.
Yeah.
Without thinking like I need to pay them back, or I'm going to owe them, or, like, it's okay for me to get the phone call and somebody saying, hey, how are you doing? Because I'm usually the one who, say, how are you? How are you? How are you? Okay, good, good, good. And then I'm like, But yeah, that receiving. And one of the things you said in there about kind of getting from point A to point B, and you might need somebody to say a word or give you some encouragement or kind of pat on the back. And it kind of made me realize about this question. It's like, it's not really about where we want to be. Like, I've done this several times, and the joy that comes when somebody helps you, or you're in co-creation with someone, like you're creating something, like, that's the sweet spot. It's like that spot right in between where you're allowing you're receiving, you're reciprocating, you're also giving too, and you've like co-created something with somebody. And all of a sudden, like that's the spot. Like you've gotten to be without getting to where you thought you needed to be, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love the way you worded that. And it's like it's almost like you co-create relief. Like we're co-creating, we're here, we're making it. You just get like relief because of all the pressure of whatever we think we're supposed to be doing, and then you talk to somebody and you're like, "Oh, you're feeling the same," or, "Oh, you're right, I'm not as horrible as I thought I was," or whatever, it's like, "Oh, there's relief in this moment," which allows me to then look for the next step of support, the next step of help. So I love the way you said that.
Ooh, I love
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it just like brings up these moments of connection and that we either allow for ourselves or don't. And moments of, revealing our true self and our true voice and connecting with somebody who's doing that as well. It's like I, there's some great many things in this world, and that like is some of the pinnacle of when it's, and you can't necessarily do it, can't focus on trying to make that happen. It
Yeah.
takes being vulnerable and being willing to recognize I'm not in a good spot. I'm not where I want to be. Like
Yeah.
help me out here. Like, let's look at this together, kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the difference between those last two questions. Like, you don't want to be vulnerable with people in the place that you feel unsafe or uneasy, so you have to kind of know the difference. I know that that took me a long time. Like, I don't need to heal everybody. I don't need to share everything with everybody. I'm kind of learning the boundaries. But then when I am vulnerable with people, like, how do I continue to practice that vulnerability with the same person and continue to trust them, whether it's in partnership or friendship. I'm really great. I can be vulnerable one time with anybody. And then like the second time when they think they're like, "Hey, I want you to be vulnerable again." I'm like, "Oh, no, that's a whole other level." So this last question, at that grace that I have to have for myself, and then to allow somebody else to witness me a couple times, that vulnerability. That's
Wow,
immense.
I love that. So vulnerability more times than once. It's not just one. I was vulnerable. Check.
Yeah. One and done. That's great.
I'm done. Got to keep being vulnerable. Awesome. Well, we have actually blasted through this time and made it through the How to Be a Human list. And for everybody out there, I hope you learned some great gems in here. The golden sun, bringing your energy back, breath, grounding. We'll link to the courses that Josie referred to down below. So make sure you have that as a resource. Any closing thoughts or anything, Josie, as we head out here?
Yeah, I definitely a plug for our courses because those are great. And I love different people like different things. I've got like I have a nice astrology course for people that want to learn more about astrology. That seems to be real hot right now, is people wanting to learn just what's going on in the sky and how it affects us, because we're definitely living in a global world right now. So, there's different ways you can kind of experiment with spirituality that's safe. You can do astrology, you can do readings or classes with people. I always go with somebody that that they're suggesting something, just so you don't get into anything messy where somebody's like, "You need to do this and I'm your guru," or whatever. But there's lots of things and ways that you can learn about yourself that are playful. And I always try to encourage people to do that, because I will have a lot of people come to me that they'll say, "Well, so and so told me this," and I'm like, "Okay, that's nice. Like, how about I say this and we integrate it all? Like, you figure it out on your own." Like, don't follow things, learn from everybody and then integrate, how that fits into your life. So I think that's a really big thing when people get excited about learning. And I mean, I know you've gone through so many different courses, and I'm like fascinated to hear about it. And we've worked together. So it's like, it's so cool. I love it because I learned something from you, and it's always reciprocal. It's really
I love
cool.
it. I love it too. And I love what you said there about making it fun, being playful.
Yeah.
There's a mutual friend that we have, and I learned some things from him. And he would always ask me when I was done with a project or something, "Did you have fun? Are you happy with it?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." He'd be like, "Good. It's great."
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah. You're like, "Wait, that was supposed to be hard." I was
No, nope. I
Yeah.
had fun and I'm happy with it. Perfect.
Yes.
All
Yep.
right, Josie. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. We
Yeah.
appreciate you. And
Thank you.
we'll link to everything in the resources below.
Awesome. Always good talking to you, La. Talk to you later.